What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another session of Coffee and Martial Arts. Salud, salud, salud. Cheers. Oh, yes. Coffee, really good this morning, as usual, of course. So today we have a great show for you guys. Yes, indeed. So just remember to please leave a comment or ask questions, okay? You should take advantage of this guest and ask him a lot of questions. Just nag him. He likes that. Yes, he really does. He likes answering questions. Yeah, he will probably complain about it, but he really, really likes answering questions because, I can say this because we've been good friends for many, many years. And I used to bug him a lot back in the days, and he helped me a lot with so many things. And I'm so grateful to be able to, give back a little bit now with this platform and to have him on the show. But before I introduce my good friend, I just want to say that we are going live through Facebook, okay, at the Master Frank Soto Kinetic Dragon Facebook page. Okay, you can follow us there. You can also follow us on YouTube on the Kinetic Dragon channel. Okay, just look for the Kinetic Dragon, subscribe, click on the little bell so you get notifications when we're going live. Okay, and if you're on Facebook, please like and share this video. Okay, that really helps us a lot to reach more of you and to have more support and more guests here. Okay, we're also going live on Facebook through the Internacional with a C, okay, because it's in Espanol, Internacional Hall of Fame. I know it's mixed, yes. They are a group of people down in South America. They are from Argentina, and they have a very big community of martial artists, and they support us with letting us go live through their Facebook page. So we are very honored to be a part of that group as well. And remember that we go live every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, okay? We have different people from different venues and different arts. Mostly, of course, a lot of them are Kenpo guys, since that's, my main art that I practice. And I know a lot of guys there. I am lucky to know a lot of people, very interesting people. Okay, so today, like I said, I have a very good friend, Dr. Robert Robertson, okay? He's been a Kenpoist for many, many years. I think close to 30 years now doing Kenpo. And he started Kenpo not as a kid. He was already a very successful professor. He had already had a Ph.D. So he brings a very interesting side and a very interesting point of view, the academic or the intellectual side of Kenpo. And that's what I've learned from him a lot, besides the stances, of course. He really helped me also with my English. So if my English is bad, you can nag him about, no. Actually, if my English is good, it has a lot to do with him, because I remember him saying, Francisco, do you mind if I say something when you're talking wrong? You're saying things wrong? And I'm, please do. And I know I still make a lot of mistakes with my English, but it is what it is now. But anyway, let's bring in Dr. Robertson. Yes, sir. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, nice. Good morning, my friend.
Ahua.
It's so nice to have you here. I'm very happy that you accepted my invitation. I know it's hard to bring you into this thing because of all the technology, nuances and all that stuff that that you need to do. But thank you very much, my friend, for being here. And we already have somebody saying hello here.
Uh-oh.
What? Hey, Robert. Hey, Angie.
Oh, well.
Hello. Okay. We also have Ernesto Colbrennan saying hello from Santa Fe, Argentina. Big hug from the heart. Thank you, sir. Edith Barrios, salute from Sweden. Wow.
Ooh, I always wanted to go to Sweden.
Yes. Hello. And another familiar face here, Jeffrey Koloski. Miss you, Dr. Bob.
Miss you,
Nice.
Jeff. I still got to get you together with Alan. I think you were separated at birth. I swear you're the same guy.
Nice, nice. And we have Mirta Gutierrez saying hello from Chile. Okay. And also Jaime Jerez Enriquez, hello, master from Concepcion, Chile.
Good wine in Chile.
Okay, so, well, again, thank you for being here, and and allow us to share, an hour with you. And for the people that don't know you, sir, if you could please share a little bit of your background, not just in Kenpo, but also in life, and of course the academical background, just briefly for people to get to know you, if you could, please, senor.
Sure. I was born in the 1950s. My dad was a Navy chief, so I was what they called back then a Navy brat. I lived up and down the East Coast, including Puerto Rico, but never learned any Spanish because back then we weren't encouraged to hang out with those people.
Right.
I got out of high school in 1970 and started working, mostly in hospitals. Like a lot of people in Kenpo have military or police backgrounds, I had a background which was looking at a 6 foot long puddle of blood and having somebody say, well, you may want to put on a pair of gloves. We think that guy had hepatitis. And after a while, I started working as a respiratory tech back when you could still do that with on-the-job training. Then I started college at University of Colorado at Boulder, Oz in the Rockies. Got out of that, spent a year working as a respiratory tech in a children's hospital in Denver. Then started graduate school at an Ivy Leaguer. Finished my doctorate, got out of there, went to a number of theory schools, think Kenpo camp, but less hitting, and then taught various places. Ended up kind of washing out of my big time academic career, moved out to California. I was in love, don't ask, and looking for a job, found some work, and met a woman named Toni Wasserberger who offered to teach me Kenpo, starting in her backyard at, this would have been in late 92, I think, 93. And it took me several years to figure out that the reason I couldn't bend my knees and get down as low as she could is that she was a foot shorter than me, which she did not mention. So eventually,
Of course.
she introduced me to Larry Tatum, who was on Green Street in Pasadena at the time. And by the time I got up to Orange Belt, I was back on my knees again teaching children. After years of that, I ended up getting a full-time job down in Blythe. If you know Blythe, it's almost as warm as Hermosillo.
Nice.
It's a little warm down there. It turned out that I was working with a guy, Bill Ponder, who had been, what's his name, student down in San Diego, I've forgotten, Parker Linnekin. And we used to train some together. And then after a while, my full-time job kind of drew me away from Larry's. I kept working and teaching, still taught some Kenpo, but mostly English and philosophy, and retired last year, really good timing. And here I am.
Very nice. Very nice. And so you've been doing Kenpo for 28, 29 years, right?
Yeah, just about. I mean, these days, my doing Kempo is mostly kata and techniques in the backyard and some things that I think are Kempo, but not everybody might think that are Kempo. Like, for example, if you want to see, for my money, the best version of kicking set one ever done, look at a movie called White Knights with Gregory Hines and Mikhail Baryshnikov, and
Right.
look at the
Beautiful.
scene that Twyla Tharp choreographed of them doing something that I swear is a mutation of kicking set one. They can dance a little better than I can, though.
I bet.
A little bit. But just watch him kick. It's amazing.
Let's see. We have some footage here. I think you're in that video. How was that experience, huh?
Oh, is this the one where I'm getting hit in the face and people off camera are going, oh God?
Yeah, I guess that's the one. There you are.
Ah, ooh. No, my hair hasn't changed that much. Yeah, there's Jay, possibly the toughest man I ever met in Kempo.
Yeah, he's good Kenpo guy. Yeah, I used to teach him, I think.
Yeah, he's still around. I talked to him about 2 weeks ago.
Really? How's he doing?
Spectacularly well, as far as I can tell.
He's a. I remember him being a very, very nice gentleman.
Oh, he's a sweetie.
I think I
Also,
remember. Yeah. No, no, go,
as you
please.
may know from hitting Jay, if you want to know what it's like to punch Jay Kirshner, go outside your house, find a fire hydrant, and punch the fire hydrant. It's
That's
pretty
right.
much the same experience. I didn't even bother trying to punch him after a while. If we'd spar, I just kick him in the head right away and then run. Punching him.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I remember Jay. He was a car salesman back then, was it?
He ran a body and fender repair shop
Oh, there you go.
for a big company in Pasadena.
Right. So you taught at the Larry Tatum Studios for many many years, right?
Yes, it,
Can you share some experience that you remember there?
um, I can think of a lot of things. What I think about now that I'm retired is I think about the times I let students down. That bugs me. But on the happier side, I think about students like the infamous Elizabeth. I don't know if you ever met Elizabeth.
Of course.
Well, Elizabeth was as tough as Jay in her way. Elizabeth was born with cerebral palsy and earned her black belt. And I mean, earned her black belt.
I remember she was. I think she was a purple, blue, and green were the ranks that I saw her going through. I think.
Yeah, well, she eventually got up there. And the main thing I remember about Elizabeth was I would be working, I would be teaching her. And especially as she got older, I would just tell her frankly, look, if you get in a real fight, you're going to go down a lot. So you got to be prepared for it.
Right.
And, like a teacher will, I would push her a little more and push her a little more and push her a little more. And one day I saw her go down on her back, did a decent break fall, but let her head go back and cracked it on the mat. And I stood there like, in a second, Larry Tatum is going to come out of that office and I'm going to have an issue.
Of course.
And he didn't. And her mother, who was sitting right on those benches they used to have by the front doors, didn't bat an eyelash. And I looked down at Elizabeth, and the only thing I saw in her eyes was she was pissed off and about to get up and clock me one. It wasn't, ow, I'm hurt. It wasn't, I'm scared. It was, when I get up, Buster, you better be ready. And that's one of the things I remember most because it taught me a lot about what I'd have to call fighting spirit, which there's no substitute for.
Right.
There's just not.
And
And
that takes me to the next question, actually. Becoming from this academic and background, you got all the way up to a PhD and all that, and you put all your effort there, and then going into Kenpo. What did Kenpo? Uh, what did it do for you?
well, I would have to go back to some things from my childhood that I don't want to get into right now. Let's
Okay,
just say I was always a bookworm.
right,
So you can think about normal kid behavior and figure out pretty much how that went.
right,
Some of it was that. Some of it was actually applying things I learned in graduate school about breaking things down and how to study. Some of it was what the old Patch used to say, confidence. Because when I put this, I had mentioned this to you before when we were making sure the video would work.
right.
But the real lockdowns and before I retired, I was teaching in a couple of the local prisons.
Okay,
And I would have thought that would scare me to death because, you know, the guards watch you, but you're basically in a room with like 25 to 30 guys.
right,
And there ain't any fat ones. And there ain't any ones who won't fight.
right.
And there's a couple guys who I'm pretty sure should not be getting out of prison for a long, 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 long time.
Right.
And I think a lot of the way I got along with them, because I initially thought I'm going to have a hard time dealing with this because it's going to scare me.
Hmm.
What it really did was wake me up and keep me on my toes. I think what Kenpo helped with is two opposite mistakes you can make with prisoners or on the mat. Mistake one is you treat the other guy with contempt.
Right.
Because if you do that,
You're in
they're
trouble.
probably going to notice.
Oh yeah.
You and I used to talk about, because everybody did, that you could tell the difference between when somebody just screwed up and hit you too hard and when somebody wanted to hurt you.
Right. Of
And
course.
the first one, it was like, oh, good hit. That really hurts. I'm going to take a couple days off. Nice shot. And the second one was, I'm about to bust you up.
Yeah.
The other mistake you can make when you're teaching in a prison is looking weak.
Right.
Because whatever you do, you've got to put barriers up
Of course.
and you've got to stick to your barriers. Because I would see faculty members and administrators who would go in and treat prisoners with contempt. And a 5-year-old could look at the prisoner's eyes and see this is a bad idea. And I would see faculty members who would think, oh, they're just cuddly little misunderstood, socially repressed guys. And I would think, no. So I would go in and I would give this sort of speech out of Robert Frost's poem, Good Fences Make Good Neighbors. And I would say, I'm going to respect your side of the fence. You're going to respect my side of the fence.
Right.
And people would get on my side of the fence and say things like, well, can't you take this note and send it to my grandmother? Uh, Cuddly Dr. Bob would turn into annoyed Dr. Robertson
Right.
and would basically go, I believe, sir, that we discussed this and it's clearly laid out in the syllabus. I don't think we should discuss this any further for your security.
Right.
And that would almost always be the end of it. And you usually didn't have to go to. Now, if you'd like me, I can walk outside and get the guard sergeant in here and we can all have a mutual discussion of this issue. Right?
Right.
And I think Kenpo really helped me with not being the kind of intellectual who would try and explain everything.
Okay.
And by the way, this is something I learned from you, Mr. Soto. What I learned was, no, just hit them. And a lot of the times,
Oh,
there's nothing to say or discuss. Hit them.
well, it works.
If they don't stop, hit them harder. Would you like me to offer a tip on how to do this safely?
Please.
Well, look at concepts like missiling and white dot, black dot focus.
Okay.
And when somebody's giving you crap, the next time you're dummying for them in a technique line, gun sight, center chest, a little bit above the xiphoid process, you know, those little bones at the bottom of the sternum, you don't want to hit that. You can theoretically shove those through the liver. That's very bad. But hit
Right.
them someplace where it'll sting. And it's good for your training and it's good for their training that when you throw that straight right punch, you ding your knuckles off their breastbone. And I mean knuckles, so they feel it.
Yes.
And
I remember you used to do that.
yeah, and then Larry says, okay, let's have Robert punch you again. You might want to step back this time. Because what these guys won't do is step back fast. They think they're going to stand there and block you.
Right.
So you ding
Right.
them again. And this happens 2 or 3 times, and they rub their chest and get back in line. And you just sort of think, remember what you did 3 weeks ago? Well, I think we just paid that off.
Nice. Jeffrey says, just hit the bad guy. I learned that from Frank too. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's related to something else I learned. There are a lot of really nice folks. There are a lot of folks who are okay. And this is true in prisons. There are a few folks who really are bad guys. They're just
Yeah.
bad guys. I don't know why. I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know if it's their upbringing. And I don't care.
Right.
And sometimes all you can do is hit them.
Yeah. Sometimes it goes down to that. Sure.
But
Angela says, I've had that same look your direction that Elizabeth had.
that is absolutely true. I distinctly remember the occasion, and I was hoping you'd forgotten.
I guess she hasn't.
Jeff, by the way, Mr. Kalowski, who just popped up,
Right.
was there for an important place. I learned that. It was the famous time he called me over to spar with a guy I'll refer to as cigarette smoking man on, I think it was his green belt test.
Mm,
And I
okay.
knew the guy didn't like me. I knew he'd try and hurt me if I gave him a chance.
Right.
And a couple minutes into sparring, I apparently decided, Mr. Ph.D., that I had figured all this out and I didn't need to worry about it anymore. And guess what happened?
What?
Clocked me in the face as hard as he could clock.
Yeah. He did that to me more than once too. I know what you're talking about.
And I kind of woke up.
And he likes me.
Sorry?
He did that to me as well, and he liked me back then. I don't think he likes me now, but he liked me back then.
I bet not. I wonder why that is.
Well,
It's probably
I'm a
for
nice guy.
Yeah, me too. I'm a lovely guy.
Yeah.
And we started sparring again. My mind went blank. And the next thing I remember is saying, Jeff, you might want to stop us. I think he's bleeding. Because my little reptile brain cut him right here, exactly where he'd hit me.
Wow.
And I mean, enough that he was dripping a little bit. And I kind of woke up and went, what the hell just happened? No, 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 just hit him.
Well, that's good to know. Nice, nice, nice. We have more comments. Let me say something. We got some more people saying hello. Carlos Villarroel says, Buona tarde, Big Masta. Salute from Brazil, Manaus. Salute to your guest and good coffee. Thank you. Merv Orman from UK Infinity Kenpo. Hello, sir. I hope you're getting better. Okay, we got Mary Hallett. Amazing. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Carlos Garcia Huidobro. Salud, maestros from Santiago de Chile.
Tell him I know about you guys, and I know about Pisco now.
Okay.
Hard to say which is more dangerous.
El maestro Robert dice que conoce bien ya a los chilenos y sobre todo sabe acerca del pisco y no sabe cuál es más peligroso, si uno o el otro. Saludos. Okay. Mr. Damian Abbott says, hope you're still keeping a close eye on the birds outside your window, Mr. Robertson. I'm awaiting another of your email testing me.
Tell him what we didn't get this spring is the mockingbird who thinks that doing a car alarm 94 times in a row is sexy.
Yes, that's bad. Oh my God. Oh, that's good. Marcel de Young says, good to hear from you, Mr. Robertson. I guess we met only once in Pasadena in 2000.
I'm pretty sure I remember meeting you, Mr. de Jong, and I certainly remember the size of your forearms.
Yes. Nice, nice. Salute to you, Marcel. Thank you for being on the show, sir. Much appreciated for watching it. Okay, let's just say one more. Jose Antonio Olmos, salud from Mexico City. Your friend, Maestro Jose Antonio. Salud, my friend. Saludos. Gracias. Okay, so of course, I'm gonna go in this direction. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so because, like I said, I learned a lot from you back in the day, and I continue to do so. And actually, a lot of the stuff that I study afterwards, years later, came from ideas and concepts that you share with me. So, what's your point of view, your academical or intellectual point of view of how Kenpo is created and set up, or constructed? I don't know, designed.
Well, as we sort of mentioned a little, I'm fairly sure that if you went back to the 1950s and got a good look at Mr. Parker's transcripts from Brigham Young when he was studying anthropology,
Huh?
I got a shiny nickel says that one of the things he was reading was some what's called structuralist anthropology,
Right.
probably Claude Levi-Strauss, who did like The Raw and the Cooked, important name, which is why that old Fine Young Cannibals album is called The Raw and the Cooked, by the way.
Nice. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Calling yourselves the Fine Young Cannibals is transgressive of the entire concept of,
Of course.
believe me, that actually made sense. Anyway, what I think is going on is that what Mr. Parker brought to Kenpo was what I would call a structuralist interpretation of its organization and its teaching. So, what's structuralism? Basically, structuralism is Legoism. You set up a bunch of fine, discrete blocks, and then you snap the blocks together in different orders to get the results you want. You can think of it like a deck of cards, too, right? You've got a set deck of cards. Some of the organizations of those decks of cards make sense. Some don't make sense. The more you know, the more different combinations you can run, the more you can calculate the probabilities of those combinations. But what you've really got is a pretty small number of basic choices that you just shuffle. Now, if you want to read about this stuff, I guess Master Soto is calling up some of the ideas. I would look at Claude Levi-Strauss, The Raw and the Cooked. I would look at a guy named A.J. Grimas, Greimas, who did a lot of the same stuff with fairy tales, and a guy named Vladimir Propp, Propp. What they both argued is that if you look at fairy tales and folk tales, what you've got is a small number of characters and a small number of situations, and then you just shuffle them. So in fairy tales, for example, there's always a hero, there's always an anti-hero, there's
Okay.
always a princess, there's always what's called a helper figure, which is tricky because the helper figure, like Coyote and Native American myth, you're never sure whether he's helping you or not. Look
Right.
at Tales of Don Juan.
Right.
Trickster, Coyote, Don Juan, you're never quite sure if you're being helped or you're being smacked in the head. But anyway, what happens is there's only so many characters you can have in a fairy or folk tale. There's only so many situations, and then you just shuffle them. Another way to see it is something you run into Kenpo very early, and they're what I would call binary oppositions.
Right.
Uh, Binary opposition is like up, down, left, right, front, back, inward block, outward block, upward block versus downward block, right? Extending a kick versus retracting a kick. And by the way, big key to improving your kicks is focus on how you get them back. Um, all that stuff you learn very early in Kenpo, right versus left.
Right.
And what you're doing is developing a student's knowledge of and sense of what those little tiny Lego blocks are.
Hmm.
If you're interested in binary oppositions, my recommendation is look up George Carlin, the comedian's routine on football versus baseball, because it's brilliant and it's dead on. What he
Okay.
does is a structuralist interpretation of the difference between the two with some conclusions about what the two games mean. But he doesn't get fancy, he just says football is played on a grid, baseball is played on a diamond. So there's your two sides of the same coin, right? You got a
Right.
grid, you got a diamond. In football, you score a goal. In baseball, you go home. In football, you have a penalty. In baseball, you have an error.
Right.
In football, you have the long bomb. In baseball, you have the sacrifice fly. And he just goes through the whole thing,
Interesting.
establishing the basic set of blocks you're playing with, and then showing you what the blocks mean.
Okay.
What I think happens in Kenpo is very early on, you start learning basic building blocks, how they're arranged, and what some of the likely outcomes are from snapping the little blocks together in certain ways.
Okay.
So look at the first 10 techniques, right?
Right.
Step back, block with your right,
Right.
right? And it's an inward block. Next technique along, step back, block down with your right.
Right.
Then it's step back, block out with your right.
Hmm.
Then it's step back, block down with your right again, slide it down
Right.
to defend against a kick, and so on and so forth.
Right. So, um, by applying this um, Lego, pieces together, and this, uh, like a puzzle building, right? What uh, would be the goal of this? What do you think it's the outcome of applying this in your learning process?
Well, first, it's to make the system easier to learn.
Okay.
If didn't think about this, but in a lot of ways, the structuralism is replacing some of the spiritualism that you were supposed to get in very old traditional martial arts. It's more, and Mr. Parker and Mr. Tatum used to say stuff like this all along. It's becoming first a mechanic of motion and then an engineer of motion.
Right.
Another thing you might get from it is what I guess you'd have to call creativity. Though a lot of what that creativity is either snapping different blocks together that you haven't tried before,
Right.
or the situational awareness argument, where it's, oh, I'm not at this part of the program, I'm at this part of the program. I don't need to restart from the beginning of the program, I just need to pick it up here.
Right.
So, an example would be if you look at the extension of Five Swords,
Hmm.
that part where you use the left hand
Right.
to get him in the neck, hook him down. Well, what's charging RAM?
Right.
You don't have somebody charge in on you and you start blocking their arm up high and then get there eventually.
Hmm.
It's like being a machine gunner, and you saw people do this, and you heard Larry warn about this. You just start shooting the machine gun, the guy moves, and you're like firing at the wall. What's the point? Um, that would be another thing to do with it, to learn when to edit, when to take some of the chunks out. Another really important thing to learn, though, is because I would argue formulation only takes you so far. From what I've read and seen and been taught in Kenpo, a lot of that stuff about going from what is it, ideal stage to blah blah to formulation, I
Hmm.
think you're still rearranging blocks.
Right.
I think you have to get to a point where something else happens,
Agree.
and then you're on some other planet. If you want to read about that, the guy to read is Jacques Derrida, because what deconstruction, that's the word everybody uses now, right?
Hmm.
Deconstruction is really a response to structuralist theory that says the structures only take you so far. And they only take you so far because one of the problems with structuralisms is that there's always some part of the structure, some center to it, which can't be talked about within the structure. Because if it were talked about within the structure, then you could dissect it further.
Okay.
But the only way it can make the system work is not to be talked about. The example Derrida gives is sociology and humanism. Sociology has to run on a certain concept of what a human being is,
Right.
white guy, but he can't talk about that because if it talks about that, then white guys become part of the object of study of sociology. That, by the way,
Okay.
is one of the commonest complaints about Claude Levi-Strauss,
Okay.
that it's always Western guys sticking everybody else under the microscope. They never get under the microscope. But I do think you get to a point where, like my student Elizabeth, that's not structuralism talking when she gets back up and comes after you. That's something else.
Right.
Or doing something radically different in Kenpo. That's
So
something else.
so we could say that eventually you need to go beyond this Lego matrix that you created.
I think you got to go in both directions. I think you basically got to rethink what's at the heart of that matrix. So, in a way, I mean, I don't do it because I'm kind of prissy, but in a way, what current MMA and Gracie Jiu Jitsu does is go back to stand up striking arts and pull out something that's at the center of them, which is the theory that you're always going to be standing up.
Right.
And I'm all for that. And we've all heard what Mr. Parker had to say about that, which is you better not find yourself on your face in a parking lot with three guys kicking you,
Right.
because wrestling ain't going to help you.
Right.
But I think you also have to do something like maybe go to dance, maybe go to religion, maybe go to visual art. I've been reading a really nice book on the murals in a place called Bogside, which is in Derry. Well, Derry if you're Catholic, Londonderry if you're Protestant and live there. But look them up. And one of the things I liked about it is the artists break down the basic geometry of these murals. The murals, by the way, are all about, well, sorry, but Catholic resistance to getting the snot kicked out of them
Right.
by the British Army.
Okay.
And it's really helpful to take a look in something in art about why the physical geometry of Kenpo. I'm not talking about the techniques, I'm talking about why the stances.
Right.
Why is it elbow over knee, fist over foot? Why don't you just extend way, way out and, like you see in some of the long form
Right.
old Chinese arts?
Hmm.
Why, even when you're using a weapon, do you keep things in alignment? And a lot of this stuff I would see in, say, art criticism help me understand that. I don't know if that makes any sense, maybe a
It
question.
does. It does. It does. Let me bring up some of the comments here because we have people saying stuff here. Let's see. Milton Ruiz says, "Saludos, salud." Uh, the Colombi. Okay. Mayor Orman says some very interesting concepts. Kempo is a thinking person's art, development and understanding, not just a sequence seeker. Nice. Damon Abbott says we actually had a Norton Mockingbird turn up at a place called Sidmouth, a few miles from me here in the UK very recently. True story. Apparently carrying a sign saying "Robert, don't shoot."
Well, I don't blame him, Damien, because there was a dark moment last spring where I thought, I have a Red Ryder BB gun right in the garage, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm getting a little tired of this. But I would ask, was the bird flying or walking?
Jesus Christ. Good question.
And if he was flying, how do you hold the sign?
That's thinking outside the matrix right there. Oh man, that's beautiful. John Ward says hi from the land of those murals.
Wow, Mr. Ward, where are you in Ireland?
Good. I think he's in Dublin.
Ooh, I miss
Let's see.
Dublin.
Yeah, nice place. Damien says, get to the point where something else happens. Absolutely. Well said, sir. Spend decades learning pre-described only to learn to evolve into natural movement, which ironically you already knew how to do when you walked in the door.
I'm just going to tell you that I am a bookworm who got a PhD in English. I don't think I did anything naturally except fall down for most of my life. Well, Francisco's heard me say this, but just to annoy Larry, I used to say, you know what you need, Larry? You need a 20-foot banner of me in my black belt standing there with my hands on my hips. And on top, it would say, if this schmuck can do it, you certainly can. And on the bottom, it would say, study Kenpo. And he would get that look and go back in the office and close the door.
Mr. Ward says Dublin, but I teach in Derry occasionally.
Yeah, Derry's a trip. I mean, the train and buses go through, and you know that little sign on the beginning on the front of the train or bus that says destination?
Right?
I don't know if they do it by neighborhood, but when I was there, and I was there after a Kenpo thing in Dublin, by the way,
Nice.
but they regularly flip the sign from Derry to Londonderry and back again. Because one of the things you learn about Northern Ireland real quick, and I'll bet this hasn't changed, is if you're not from there, don't wear orange and don't wear green and just wander aimlessly into the wrong pub. Because you may find out that blue or gray would have been a much better color choice.
Yes. I got you.
I really like Derry. Nice people, great Guinness, great art.
Nice. Angela says you have to learn it all to know what you need or won't need when the time comes to use it.
No argument here.
Matt Part says, hi to Robert, my first martial arts instructor.
Matt, are you still busting them up?
I bet he is.
Yeah, all my good students got to a point where I would go out to teach them and just think, this guy's going to snap my head off today.
Nice, nice.
It's the problem with handing people who are physically more capable the ability to use it.
I hear you. I have that same feeling when I get to dummy up for Hector, for example. Like, man, he's just going to kill me any second now. It's a good thing he has a good heart. Let's see. Daniel Estepaniu, saludos. Muy grande y felicitar por la labor que realiza día a día el Master Juan Martínez con el Hall of Fame de Argentina. Salud to Master Juan Martínez of Art International Hall of Fame. Saludos. He said, saludos, maestros. Salute to the teachers. Thank you, sir. And Daniel, thank you. Muchas gracias por tu apoyo y amistad. Thank you. Salute to all of you guys that are watching and letting us, go live through your page and stuff. Thank you for your work. Muchas gracias por su apoyo.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes. Okay, so I find all of this very, very interesting. And, I think in a way I understand a lot of what you're saying especially from the Kenpo platform, that yes, you're building and constructing and you generate all this thing like a map in your brain, right? That puts it together, both of sides of your brain, and makes you move in a certain way and follow that geometry that you're saying with the stances and the motion and all that. But yes, then it actually gets to a point where you need to, I believe that you need to go beyond that, and you won't lose a thing. You still have that matrix, and you still have that foundation, and you use some things you said, easier to learn, and then you have that creativity. And I'm gonna put myself in the line here with you, but there's a very good book, Think Fast and Slow, from Daniel Kahneman, right?
Yeah, I've been reading about that lately.
And he talks about intuition, and the difference between the intuition of a layman or the intuition of an expert, right? If we talk in martial arts terms, and I think this is one of the things when you already have that understanding and that geometry and that matrix, right? Your intuition is not going to be the same as the one that doesn't have it. And that's one of the points here, because I hear people saying that, I did all this and then I went back into natural movement. Yes, you did, but with a whole different understanding of that natural movement, right?
Well, first off, since I am an English major, you can go to the famous ending of Eliot's Four Quartets. We shall not cease from journeying, and the end of all our travels shall be to return to the place from which we started and to know that place for the first time.
Nice.
Second thing is, my only complaint about people who I think of as better martial artists than me fiddling around with the Kenpo system, well, I have two complaints. One is too many of them get to the point where the stances just go bye-bye because they're
Right.
blunt.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing that really bothers me, and I know you and I have talked about this over the years, the second thing that really bothers me is watching people burn bridges behind them. They think that because they understand things now, they can throw the ladder that got them to the top floor out.
Right.
And to me, what that boils down to doing is eating your own young, making sure they can never get to your level. Because if you take away what you needed, the scaffolding you needed, they ain't got any. And if they ain't got any, you can always be what Alex
Numero
used
uno.
to say, a master of a martial arts,
Yeah, of
far
course.
superior to them. And you're not supposed to, as a teacher, want your students to be inferior to you.
Right.
You're supposed to celebrate that moment when, where did I read about this? It was in some book where there was a sword fighting teacher. And one day his best student sort of parries him unexpectedly. And the old man looks at him and thinks, at last an equal. He's thrilled that somebody got to that level. That's what bothers me about it. I mean, what's the old thing I heard back in college? Never keep your mind so open your brain falls out. Uh, when I see people throw out the stances and throw out the scaffolding, I just think, okay, so much for teaching.
And one other thing is, if you're gonna do that, okay, and because I think anybody can do whatever, right? Whatever they feel comfortable with. But if you're gonna do that, be honest. Say, these are my findings.
Yeah,
This is what I understand, and this is how I adapted the art to myself. But this doesn't mean it's when what gets to me is when people say my findings are equal to the whole, right? And I'm going to change the whole because of my findings to everybody else. And then, hey, see, okay, just share your experience, which is it has value, of course, but don't try to change the whole thing without being honest. At least say, okay, I'm changing this because of what I have found, and this is the way I solve things, and this is what I'm sharing with you. But still, the platform of what I've learned is still here, right? For example, that's what I have done. I teach my own way, but the curriculum in the Kenpo system is still there.
yeah,
That's why I put it on video in Spanish.
yeah. Just tell students what it is and why you're doing what you're doing and have it make sense. I think what people forget, though, is not everybody gets to be Ed Parker. Parker
And
had his problems pretty clearly, and plagiarism was absolutely one of them. But he was in the right place at the right time among the right people, and he radically reformulated what martial arts were. I mean, there's no way around it. He did. You notice Bruce Lee never left students behind who were exactly like Bruce Lee. There were people like Dan and Santo who
Right.
learned enormously from him, but they don't move like Bruce Lee. They don't do what he does.
Hmm.
A lot of things are different.
Right.
Um, in the field I studied formally, literary criticism, you can see the same kind of problem. When you get out of grad school, you've got to be kind of a radical and do all this exciting, innovative new stuff.
Right.
But the problem is, sometimes you're in a sort of historical trough where that can't really happen. Literary studies cracked open in the late 60s and 1970s, just like literature cracked open from about the time of people like Jean Rhys or V.S. Naipaul and the others. It cracked open because radically different people started doing that stuff. The problem is that now I can't even read literary criticism anymore because my response to 90%, 95% of it is, thank you. I kind of read that and got taught about it in 1982. You got anything else? No. Okay, let's move on. I, I I just think you got to catch the train when it goes by, and you can't pretend there's a historical train there when there's not. And
And
above all, I'm always going to nag about stances. I just will.
of course, of course. Let me say a couple of hellos. Kim Dole says, "Good point, Robert." Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. Catherine Letter Sumter says, "Hello, Master Frank and Dr. Robert from CCDP, Squim, Washington."
By the way, I normally go by Dr. Bob, like the Muppet.
Nice. Robert, I think your computer shifted. We aren't seeing your full face right now. There
Oh,
you
it
go.
fell off my face.
Uh, he's hiding, Angela. There it is.
Aw.
So I was going to say something. Um, yeah, I remember. Okay, so when it comes to one of the things about you know questioning Ed Parker, right, the founder of the art, blah blah blah. Okay, when you start questioning his work and his art, and you start changing things, which is fine, but I think what we lose sometimes, and if you maybe you can help me out a little bit here. We have a couple of minutes left, but we lose the perspective of what was going on when he created the system, when he created the curriculum, right? And we try to look, and we start looking at things from 2021, what he created back in the 60s, 60 years ago, and the context and the environment and life itself, what's different, right? So how can you know take those things in consideration?
I don't know. I know when I look back at some of the earliest videos of Kenpo, it looks pretty clunky to me.
Right.
I know that somebody like Larry Tatum or Juan Serrano, or you for that matter, move better. Sorry, but you do.
Sure.
Um, I, I know that there's a different energy around Kempo now, especially in the United States, because as we were talking about, I think I think in some ways the Kempo train has moved on in the United States, and I think a lot of the really talented martial artists have gone into MMA or something like that.
Right.
I'm sorry, but I do.
Oh yeah, I can see it.
And
I guess. Yeah.
and some of what's going on is some of what's changed is inherent in Kempo. And it's inherent in the democratization of the martial arts, and it's inherent in capitalism. Uh, Surprise, folks, martial arts started getting commodified and sold in the late 50s and early 60s.
Right.
And that had a few consequences. Like, for example, I couldn't run a martial arts studio now for several reasons. And one of them is I couldn't put up with the parents of all the kids you have to have in there to pay the rent. Couldn't do it.
Right. I got you.
Um, I've always thought that people underestimated the willingness of a lot of people to come in and get their butt kicked to learn. But there are also a lot of people that you can't afford to kick their butt because if you do, you can't pay the bills. And back when martial arts was secretive and kept locked up in various ways and confined within certain ethnic groups,
Right.
you could do that because people at Shaolin or the Shotokan studios in Tokyo didn't have to worry about money the same way because their sources of money weren't the same. There would be
Right.
government support, there would be gifts, whatever. So, I mean, I'm pretty left wing. I'm not arguing against democracy.
Of course.
But one of the things democracy means now is sellability. And sellability has not been kind to Kenpo karate. Uh, like to tell you different, but I don't see it that way. I
Right.
don't see how you run studios and teach people without sellability. So I guess it's really one of those things I think more of as a binary opposition, a problem than one way or the other. One thing I will tell all you folks who are Spanish speaking and outside America is I honestly think you guys are the future of Kempo. From the martial artists I've seen and the passion and enthusiasm that comes to it and all the rest, and the ability to move and dance way better than I'll ever be able to dance. Um, I just see that as where Kempo's going. I really do.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Angela says, "Stop hiding. I know where you live." Ha ha ha.
What are you worried about? I really do look like this, you know.
Jeffrey Kolaski says, "Love the comments per stances being the scaffolding of the art."
Yep. I don't see how you get around it. The only
Agreed.
thing I'd add, Mr. Kolowski, is as I've gotten older, I've gotten to appreciate things like finger set more because, like Larry used to say, the older guys get, the less they want to close their hands because you just start stiffening up.
Right.
And that stuff, or what is it, striking set two, are incredibly helpful for maintaining your hand and shoulder flexibility and all the rest.
Right.
Um, I think the stances are the basic scaffolding of the art. I think everything has to be built on that. I do. But I also think that there's an equal issue with people who don't shape the weapons well. I mean, if I had Larry grab my hand and yank it to where it belonged once, it happened 300 times
Right.
because he was very insistent on no, when you're doing an eye poke, those two fingers have to line up. The palm of your hand has to pop forward. There has to be a straight line from your wrist up your arm, and absolutely picky about it.
Right.
One thing I got from Tony, by the way, if you're interested in finger set that really helps, get a mirror, do finger set, and line up all the strikes with your own body. The eye pokes, for example, go to the top of the eye, just a little to one side of center, not to
Right.
the middle of the eye. They're not designed to poke you directly in the middle of the eye. They're designed to scoop the eyeball out.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a spoon. And stuff like that really helped me see what I was doing, because I think part of what you're doing with that stuff is learning to almost bitmap your own body as well as the opponent. Again, Larry was always insistent about this. You're measuring out the world in units of you, like an artist holding up their thumb to measure how tall the tree is before they paint it. You've got to learn that for yourself. It's not it's not the same size for anybody else.
Right. Right. Kim Dole smiles. Let's say Jeffrey says we got a jack soon, Robert. We think alike. Me thinks we think alike.
So
Right.
methinks me should call me.
Nice. Yes. There you go, Jeff. Damon says, I've learned a great deal from Robert today, but then I would, as he's got an incredible mind, so his word will resonate, and it's a pleasure to know him. Thank you, gentlemen, for a very fulfilling show. Thank you, sir. And actually, we are out of time.
Thank you all. I'll hope to meet you all in person someday.
Anything you want to add, sir?
Bend your knees.
Yes, drop lower. Nice. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you had a good time. I sure as hell did, and learn a lot as well. Thank you, my friend. I always learn from our conversations, and you gave me a lot to research for sure. So take care, everybody, and talk to you soon. Kim Dahl says, good one. Thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow with more coffee and martial arts. Take care. Have a great day.